Okay, all right. But let's consider bombshell number 3. And this one is absolutely certified, coming from the people at the remains of the negotiating table, let's put it this way. Guess who placed a 40-minute phone call to Arakshi in Tehran? The president of the UAE, Mohammed bin Zayed, in person. MBZ called Arakshi, which is something that many of us were, okay, gaming that it might happen a few months from now. But it happened this weekend. What did MBZ tell Araki? Basically, he said that Abu Dhabi wants to establish a durable, long-term relationship with Tehran. This is absolutely crazy because the whole posture of the UAE before the war, which started on February 28th, and in the first stages of the war, or during the 40-day war, simply collapsed with this phone call coming from the omni decider in UAE. That's him. Nobody else decides. Everything is via MBZ. So the substance of what MBZ discussed with Arakshi was later relayed to Munir via Arakshi himself. Arakshi told Munir, look, guess who called me? And guess what he was proposing? So now everybody's in the loop. Everybody at the highest level is in the loop. So this adds to the role of Pakistan as a sort of diplomatic and military bridge between Iran, the United States, and of course, the GCC. And now with the UAE being part of this group, and they were not until this phone call today, that changes the game completely. This shows to all of us and all of you, our audiences, that for the first time in 6 months, the UAE is now, via the only person that decides anything in the UAE, because it's an immensely centralized system, is ready to find some sort of accommodation with Iran. So what is the overarching interpretation of this sequential bombshells? Is that Iran, and it's fascinating because they more or less telegraphed what they're doing. And obviously, in American mainstream media, across the West, in the Atlanticist NATO-STAN axis, almost nobody believed it. And nobody believed that they would have what it takes to pull that off. And this is exactly what they are pulling off. They are consolidating and exercising their own maximum leverage at precisely the moment which, let's say, from yesterday to today, from this Saturday to today's Sunday, Washington and the Trump administration is running out of options, as if they had any, apart from bombing Iran to death all over again, with absolutely devastating consequences, which were spelled out not only by Iran, but by some GCC members, including MBS personally telling Trump, stand down, back off, because we are not going to pay the price for your latest adventure. So this means the Trump administration is exhausted. The GCC is fed up. They want a way out that doesn't include them being caught in this American escalation, and with the 10-to-1 counter escalation coming from Iran. So they want some sort of diplomatic accommodation, even if that takes months. But at least this would mean, in practice, a return to the MOU. And of course, the only thing that is preventing a return of the MOU is the President of the United States himself. So it's very, very important when you see the sequencing of these serial bombshells, is how the leadership in Tehran, they were always so logical and meticulously logical from the beginning in terms of how we're going to exercise restraint and at the same time not too much strategically ambiguous, but being strategically advancing our agenda. So they concluded correctly several very, very important points. And this was not this weekend. This is something that has been going on for a few weeks now. That the US, the Trump administration, especially, not the US as a whole, the US economy, of course, but the Trump administration, especially, are absorbing losses they cannot sustain. It's not indefinitely. They cannot sustain these losses anymore because the red lights are coming in everywhere. And it's not only about the depletion of the strategic petroleum reserves. Don't forget that we are in the beginning of August and the deadline is mid-August. So we have less than 2 weeks for the depletion to be red lights everywhere. They calculated correctly that their negotiating strategy and sequencing remains intact. And they didn't have to tweak or change anything. What they are demanding is what they were always demanding: respect for their positions and basically to follow their series of steps outlined in the MOU so we can get to the Holy Grail, which is a path towards a deal after the Memorandum of Understanding. So Pakistan's role is back. It's important because Pakistan, once again, is the bridge between Iran, the US, and the GCC. And this Arakshi phone call to Asim Munir put the whole thing back on track. Arakshi had to tell Munir all of the above because he knew that Munir would immediately tell the Americans, look, this is it. Guys, you have either you come back to the table or that's it. There's not even the possibility of an off ramp. This is the only off ramp in town, and there will be no others. Also, very, very important, the Iranians calculated correctly that sooner or later the Gulf states, which are absolutely paranoid, fearful, and as vassals, they knew that the way the wind is blowing, it would force them to find some sort of accommodation with Tehran. And of course, the key of the one of the major bombshells, which is the 10-to-1 factor. If Trump and the Trump administration eventually, okay, it didn't happen this weekend, it's still on the table. It could happen anytime. Don't forget, we're dealing with maximum volatility in Washington and in Mar-a-Lago. If they strike, the costs will be absolutely unbearable for all partners of the United States all across West Asia, and not only in the GCC and the Persian Gulf. This includes everybody, and especially outside of the everybody, Jordan. So this is basically, I would say, the summary of what happened between yesterday and today in the communications between Iran and Pakistan. Yes, it is a series of bombshells because Iran as a whole, cohesively, in terms of the military vector, the political vector, and both vectors linked to the decisions by a leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, they are thinking as a block. They are thinking cohesively. They are thinking in sync among all them. And everything that they see coming from the West, they interpret it as, yes, our strategy is working. So this tends to reinforce their strategy, which is this restraint up to a certain level. But then when we respond, it has to be devastating. And we have to make the Americans see that the costs we are imposing today, day after day, for them are becoming absolutely unbearable. So is there any factor, a hidden factor, a fog of war factor that would force the Iranians to change their strategy? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it's very, very impressive that, for instance, in terms of what they have been offered and upgraded by the Chinese, only reiterated to them that their strategy was the right one. So, if there is a counter response by Iran against a possible, it's always on the table, of course, American attack. They have higher missile accuracy, devastating effect. They are, they're not susceptible to signal jamming because, of course, they're using the Murmansk, the Russian Murmansk system, and they're using the Chinese Beidou system. So their drone operations are even more lethal than they were until recently. Target acquisition, they can any target for them all across West Asia and beyond for them is very, very easy. So this means that the Iranian command structures are practically impervious to American electronic attack. So, this is an integration of forces. I prefer not to comment on the Russian angle because I didn't have time to confirm this with Russia. And even if I did, this is something that the Minister of Defense in Moscow would never admit in public in terms of what they are supplying Iran. So let me see if we can get to the bottom of it all. Please give me a second. Yes, this is a very interesting, the way it was put by some of our intel sources. The way Iran sees the Trump predicament as it stands now. And this is a quote. He has no way out. And yes, everybody knows, even in the Beltway, even in Washington, D.C., that he has no way out. The only way out would be possibly a return to the MOU, and of course, discuss the terms of how the Americans would come to the MOU in a way that the Iranians immediately would not say, no, they are bluffing again. No, we cannot trust them. Of course, the element of trust is less than zero between both parties. The fact that the Iranians looking at the chessboard, looking at the military battlefield, looking at the tit for tat escalation ladder, and looking at the political reorganization of the war, which is something that happens day after day. When they did the math on all the key points, their conclusion is more than obvious, and more than obvious than anybody that's been following the war even before February 28th. None of the US objectives were achieved. Among them, destruction of Iran's military capacity. Iran's military capacity today is even stronger than it was almost 6 months ago. Regime change, collapse of the Iranian state. The Iranian state today under Moshtaba, and the Moshtaba era started only a few days ago after the funeral rites of his father, Ayatollah Khamenei. No collapse, on the contrary, it's much, much stronger than it was compared to the start of the war. The forced reopening of the Strait of Hormuz on American terms not only didn't happen, it will never happen. And the way the Iranians see it, the Iranian power structure see it, that's it. Strait of Hormuz will always be managed by Iran, and there are modalities to do it. They are ready to discuss with Oman the different modalities, but that's it.